Representation is critical, but sometimes brands can miss the mark if they just focus on checking a diversity box. That's one reason Tristen Norman from Getty Images is really focusing on educating brands about the importance of not just representation, but true inclusion. We chat with her to find out more. Tristen, thank you so much for joining us. I know that you wear a lot of hats at Getty Images, but one thing that you work on specifically is inclusive and representational imagery. Can you talk me through some of the tools you have at your disposal to encourage more of that?
One of the biggest and most important tools we've been working on for the last year or so is the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion and Imagery Toolkit, which is a comprehensive roadmap for marketers, for creatives, for anyone who's touching visuals to understand what diversity and inclusion looks like within a particular market. And we look at, within this toolkit, 8 different lenses of identity. So some of the lenses of identity we cover are race and ethnicity. Of course, that's such an important lens of identity to think about, but also gender and sexual orientation and age and social class and body size, because it's so important to recognize that we're not all just one thing. And so we want to make sure that we're providing really detailed information, guidance, and insights on these different lenses of identity so marketers and creatives feel much more equipped to make the change that we know that people want to see.
What is your take on what businesses need to understand and implement differently in order to make sure that their images are truly representative?
So you can't just stick a person who is from some marginalized or underrepresented community in your advertising and say, oh, done. No, you have to really think about how you can humanize these communities. A lot of advertising historically has done a lot of harm in terms of upholding certain ideas about certain communities. And now they also need to think about, well, how do I actively disrupt those stereotypes? Think about disabilities and the fact that people with disabilities are really underrepresented, and when they are represented, you get this avatar of a person in a wheelchair, and that's it. That isn't a knock against people with wheelchairs. That exists. But we have to take this view of yes, and what else? Yes, and who else? You know, you really have to think about that depth of storytelling that you're telling them. How are you humanizing them, or are you tokenizing them? And that's, I think, a thing that a brand can really ask themselves.
And I know that in your work, you approach that challenge and opportunity from a lot of different angles. It seems like you work with the content creators, the search engine, and the brands themselves to make sure that they're understanding everything you're talking about. Can you talk to me about kind of those 3 pillars and how you're thinking about them?
We are making sure that our content is up to snuff. We are taking a good look inward as much as we are looking outward. So we're always talking to our contributor community about the choices that they're making. We're working with our search data strategy team, to overhaul and clean up our content, because we've been around for a long time, over 26, 27 years. And so we know that there's a lot of stuff there that we still need to work on. And then the brand work. I mean, this is the most fun part of my job, I'd like to say, is because we get to have so many amazing conversations with brands across the industry to really think about how to disrupt the work that they're creating in a way that feels unique to them, right? So if we are working with a healthcare company, we're thinking about, okay, well, how can we make healthcare imagery more equitable, more inclusive, or in the finance industry, to think about who's buying a home. Are they an older couple? Are they an older single woman? Women over the age of 55 who are childless are making so much more money than we think about. They are really a wealthy category of women, and yet we don't often see single older women who are included in imagery where they're being shown as empowered, autonomous, and having such a good time with their lives and enjoying the fruits of their labor. So we're bringing brands' attention to those little nuances.
Love to hear your thoughts on the impact on the consumer. How does the work that you're doing have a big impact on the world around us?
People care about what's happening in the world, and consumers are buying and voting with their wallets, and they want brands that reflect their values. They want to be celebrated. They want to be seen. They are drawn to visuals that reflect them or people who look like them. And the reality is the world is much more diverse than you see in most media right now, right? And so you have to be reflecting that all of the time. That's what the people want. This has been an industry that's existed for 100 years. it's going to take 100 years to make this change. So I hope a year from now, I can point to a lot of brands that are committing to this ongoing everyday work. I hope that a year from now, we're still actually having this conversation, because we need to beat that drum. We need to be not just a firework, we need to be a pilot light for the industry. So I think that's incredibly important. I hope I get to say that again to you next year.
I love that. Well,
Yeah.
we will put it in the calendar, Tristen.
Okay.
Thank you so much for making time. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.